From America to Australia and everywhere in between, we bring you inspiring, informative interviews with accomplished South Asian diaspora spanning every field and walk of life. Welcome to the Desi Buzz Talk Show with your host, Dr. Shabana Parvez. Welcome back to the show. Joining me today from the UK, my guest is Sharon Kaur Jandu OBE, a virtual powerhouse with too many accolades, board and leadership positions to fully mention. But here are some of the highlights. Sharon is a board member of the Association of International Accountants, the AIA, and the founder of the Northern Asian Power List and the Northern Asian Power Think Tank, and founder of the Yorkshire Asian Business Association. Sharon Kaur Jandu OBE. She has been awarded an OBE by King Charles for her services to international trade. She's also the managing director of the NPH Ethnic Minority Business and Policy Forum. Sharon has an MBA and also holds master's degrees in applied artificial intelligence, data analytics, and strategic leadership. Other awards include an honorary fellowship at Leeds Trinity University. She is the managing director of the Global Diversity Positive Action, GDPA, which is a registered charity established to support the most vulnerable in the community. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you. Shabana, it's an honor to be here. Gosh, listening to that, that's kind of like thinking, gosh.
Yeah, all the things you've done, you're like, oh, wow.
Well, you don't really realize, you just go through life and do things, but when somebody reads it back to you, you think, gosh, that's quite interesting.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to build such this impressive portfolio of leadership roles?
Well, I think you can guess from my reaction that none of it was planned. It just happened. I think for me, I'm kind of on a journey, and I suppose since I've been young and been in a very loving kind of family environment, that my first sort of experience of doing things myself was when I got married. So I met my husband when I was 17. It was a love marriage, you know, when you're 17, the only criteria is drop dead gorgeous. He was drop dead gorgeous. Got married at 19, didn't realize, because we were in such a loving environment, and you know, we were given freedom as long as we studied and we were good girls. So I'm one of three. I'm the eldest daughter, and my brother is the youngest, so there's four of us, sorry. Getting married into a very sort of like traditional family was a real culture shock. Never experienced anything like that. I was so naive and probably stupid to think that I could carry on, you know, as I was in my parents' home. And it was only when actually it was the day I got married, I realized, oh my God, what have I done? But because I'm kind of like pretty strong-minded and just get on with things, I thought, right, I need to sort this out. Now that I've got myself in this situation, I need to sort this out. And to cut a long story short, it was a real culture shock, you know, coming from a very modern family to getting married into a very traditional family where I was number four daughter-in-law, and with in-laws that didn't speak English. So even though I understood Punjabi and learned all my, you know, Punjabi and Hindi through Bollywood films, which we loved when we were younger, even learning the language, you know, learning that people think very differently. But because my main objective was to, and actually we didn't have any money. So I was a student. He was like, he was a postman. And I realized that, oh my God, I'm going to have to get out of this poverty trap. So just went back into education. So at 19, you know, well, actually it was 20 because I had my son at 19, went back into education and just worked, you know, really, really worked hard. I mean, my parents were brilliant. They just said, look, you know, we're always there for you. And I just said, look, I created this mess. I'll get out of it, kind of thing. And just worked really hard. That's what I mean. There was never a plan. It was just kind of like, oh my God, I now know how it feels not to have money, not to have anything. But actually, I need to do that. So that's where it started, really.
So that drive. So now you were honored with this title, the Officer of the Order of the British Empire, OBE. So tell us a little bit about that recognition. What does this mean to you, and how do you feel it reflects your work, your contributions?
You know, it's so humbling. because I think the one thing that I learned on my journey is that I've got to be true to myself. And I think that's all I've ever done. I've only ever done things that I feel that I can give my 101%. And because again, going back to family and values and, and obviously my religion, does play a big part in the kind of person that I am, that when other people recognize what you do and, getting the OBE was just really, um, it was such an honor, such a privilege. It was such a shock as well. And I think, well, I know that a lot of that came from the work that I was doing with, really connecting non-Asian businesses with the diaspora and using that as a common thread, as a link to look at how can we use, that as a trade opportunity, particularly with India, and then
Mhm.
looking at other countries in the Indian subcontinent.
Mhm.
And I remember getting the email because it came as email. First, I thought it was spam. I thought, oh God, this is junk. They'll send anything to you. And
Mhm.
then somebody phoned me, 2 weeks after, and they said, look, we sent you an email. Is this something that you would like to accept? Because there are people that don't accept the
Mhm.
honor. And I just said, gosh, so it's true. They said, yeah, congratulations, whatever. And I think I told my mum. I told my mum, and then I didn't tell anybody else because I think I was busy at the time. And it was only because it was in the New Year's honours list on the 30th of December, I started getting calls from journalists and reporters. It was just such a lovely feeling. And I remember on New Year's Eve, because we had family coming over, and then the news leaked with the press. And then flowers just started to arrive, flowers and messages. It was surreal, Shabana, honestly. It was just
I bet.
such an incredible, feeling. It was beautiful.
Mhm. That's great. So you have, as one of we talked about one of your creations, founding the Yorkshire Asian Business Association. What led you to create that? And tell us a little bit of how you think it's grown since since its inception.
Yeah. When I went into education when I was sort of like, in my sort of early 20s. I've always had a corporate career. So, I've already alluded to the fact that ethnicity or understanding the Asian culture hasn't really been something that, I've been kind of really aware of or immersed in. Because even when we were kids, we were in a Western school, we were part of my sisters and I and my brother, we were the only Asian people in that particular area. Um, so my career was sort of like really, very, very mainstream. So the financial accountant and Santander and then Microsoft. It's only when I had the job at Santander, I kind of like was made aware of the Asian business community. And I just wondered, I thought, well, what's special about the Asian business community? Why do they have to have their own sort of like business networking sort of
Mhm.
opportunities? And it's only when I studied them further, I understood then the challenges and then
Mhm.
understood the barriers. Because I think sometimes when you're going through your own journey, when you're driven, you don't realize what barriers are. You just break them. You just get on with it. If there's a hurdle, you think, right, I need to get over that because you're really driven to do something. But the job at Santander gave me a real opportunity to get behind and understand the Asian business community. And one of the projects that I managed, I managed an SME growth accelerator program, but then I was also given the project of launching the National Asian Business Association, which was
Mhm.
really looking at how do you connect the diaspora in the UK to look at connecting with countries of origin. I thought, what a really good idea because business is all about relationships and doing things with
Mhm.
people that you like and understanding how can you make things work together when you like each other, when you've got common values.
Right.
And I thought, gosh, I should do something like that. Then I realized that in Yorkshire, because I actually was born in Leeds, which is in Yorkshire in North UK. There's nothing that brings the Asian business community together. So I thought, well, do you know what? I'll do that. So pulled together, a team of people, and very soon, from nothing, standing start, we created a business organization, which is just it's growing from strength to strength. I'm not even on the board. I have nothing to do with it. It just runs itself because actually I love empowering other people to kind of like get on with it, and I create an infrastructure so that they can grow it themselves.
That's great. It's wonderful. So yeah, it's not about you. It's about creating it for other people, and that's wonderful. And so what are the challenges, like you said, when you were talking about Asian business communities? Um, how else do you feel that this organization is addressing the challenges of the business community?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, now within our household, we're up to the third generation now. So when my parents came to the UK in the 60s, they were economic migrants and they were really hard grafters, worked really hard, and their sole sort of ambition was to contribute, obviously, to the UK and make sure that their children were educated, and they were also contributors as well. And the mindset there was really to assimilate, to integrate and to be part of. So when we grew up, my sisters and my brother, we were kind of like of the same kind of mindset that really, we need to be part of the community, we need to contribute. And it's funny really because discrimination exists everywhere, whether ethnicity is there, there's disability, there's all sorts of different sort of like discrimination factors. And I think when you're resilient, and I think our parents were more resilient than us, but actually you just if there's a hurdle, if there's a barrier, you just break that down or you find another way around it. And what I'm finding is that our children, they have a different mindset and the world is changing. But I do think that from the time when I set up YABA, the Yorkshire Asian Business Association, to now and being able to study and reflect, that actually the barriers, whether that's sort of like racial barriers or whether that's institutional sort of discrimination, or whether that's around gender, or whether it's access to not having same knowledge or networks, those barriers are still prevalent today. So one of the things, so we've evolved as an organisation. So YABA was set up in 2015. We're now, sort of like in terms of our demographic and in terms of our geographic, so not just Yorkshire, representing the business community across the north of England, and not just Asian, but recognising ethnic minority businesses as well, but making sure we've got a voice, making sure we're heard, and celebrating, because actually the world is quite a mean place. Some of the
Yeah.
stereotypes that you see, you see a certain image and it conjures up certain kind of, values or certain kind of views as well.
Connotations. Yeah.
Absolutely, that you think, well, actually, that's not right. So we
Right.
go out of our way to make sure that we celebrate good, we celebrate achievements, and we make sure we really, blow our own trumpet.
Mm.
So it started off as an Asian power list, which was, such a beautiful thing to do because the number of people that came back and said, thank you so much. We're thinking, well, thank you for being you and the work that you're doing. And
Mhm.
all I try to do is, with my teams, is just spotlight and celebrate and just feel good about it, feel good about who we are and what we are. And the fact that we're making such a great contribution, making sure that that's also in the mix when people talk about bad things, that actually there's more good things to say.
Right. So that's really good. You talked a little bit about the Northern Asian Power List, right? The NAP, and it showcases the top 100 Asian influencers as well. All right. This initiative of the showcasing, has that impacted the visibility of Asian businesses and professionals, and how has this had an impact?
And it's a good question, Shabana, because what used to happen is that people who are really good at what they do, they don't tend they're full of humility as well and humbleness. That
Mm.
actually they just beaver away, just get on with what they want to do. And I think that, accolades, awards, recognition is a really powerful thing because otherwise, how would anybody else know what they're doing?
Mhm.
And that's when I
Right.
think role modeling, and
Exactly.
actually, that peer to peer and actually sharing experiences. Because sometimes you may be in a place where you're thinking, gosh, how do I do what I need to do? Somebody's always done what you want to do, and somebody's always there to give you a
Mhm.
hand. I mean, there's no way that I am where I am because of me. There's been so many hands that have given me that lift. So actually,
Mhm.
I think we all have a responsibility to give each other a lift. I
Mhm.
think that's part of humanity. It's a really
Yes.
important thing that we lift other people and we recognize talent and greatness, and
Mhm.
celebrate it.
Yes, that's true. That's beautiful. So with all these organizations that you have been involved in, and they're somewhat diverse. You have the GDPA, the NAP, YABA, et cetera, and they all have their different visions and missions. And so your leadership approach, how do you keep like align your approach to leadership across all these diverse kinds of organizations
And
or
that
these
again,
initiatives?
yeah, no. So when I left mainstream to do my own thing, which was about 5 years ago, because GDPA was a charity, and the one thing I realized that actually when I was in a corporate career, so my last big job was Microsoft, when you've got, and so YABA was a side hustle, GDPA was a side hustle, when you've got a salary that's coming in, and it was a good salary as well, things don't really matter. But when you don't have a safety net, and so I was an entrepreneur with side hustles.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when you take away your corporate sort of role, so YABA became big, and GDPA was sort of like, I had to manage that as well because it was in a situation where it needed proper leadership. It's really difficult to do that when you're in a paid corporate position, and they wouldn't want you to do that anyway. So 5 years ago, I left Microsoft just to make sure that I could get the charity back on track and scale up YABA, which has now become the Northern Powerhouse Ethnic Minority Business and Policy Forum. Um, I did the MBA because I realized I'm a good, entrepreneur, but I don't know how to scale. That's where knowledge is really important. So
Mm.
the MBA again was a game changer. So that gave me the skills to learn about scale. I then realized that actually, am I a good leader? And actually, my whole vision and my whole purpose of doing an MSc in leadership was actually to be more of it, dare I say it, more of I'll say the word forceful, powerful leader. I thought this
Mhm.
is going to make me a more powerful leader. But actually, it's so funny because doing the masters at Newcastle University, it wasn't that. It was more about me and discovering me and my leadership style and actually understanding how do you empower people. Again, that was a game changer. And I thought, my God, this is amazing. This is really making me, instead of discovering myself, discovering the potential of other people. So since
Mm.
finishing that masters, that has really taught me about how do I unlock potential. And it sounds so cheesy, Shabana, but it's so brilliant.
Mhm.
Watching how can you unlock potential in other people and bring the best out of them and make them, better leaders and better, people in terms of contributors to either a stakeholder or part of your project. So that's done. And that realization of my own experiences makes you the kind of leader that you are, that
Mhm.
then unlocks other people, has been
Mhm.
quite humbling, really. Because
Yeah.
before that, I was kind of like on a mission, and actually, when you've experienced poverty, you never want to be poor again. But now
Mhm.
you've realized that actually there's other things that are more important. When you've got to a position where you need to, you can take that foot off the accelerator and you can do other things. And I suppose that's
Mhm.
what I'm doing now, actually, doing things where I can, put back.
Oh, well, you can give back. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that. Then leads me to my next question about community service and empowerment. As I said, because you want to give back, knowing this, how you've been through certain, not, um, situations like poverty. So the GDPA, your initiative, you're focusing on supporting vulnerable communities. You have social enterprise models. Tell us a little bit more about like any success stories that you've witnessed through this work.
So that came about was that in I think it was 2009, 2010, I was approached by the Her Majesty's courts um, to become a magistrate. And I didn't know what a magistrate was. I thought, that's really interesting. And I think because I fit the diversity, it's the other thing as well that sometimes you get approached because you think, oh God, there she is, somebody that's putting their head above the parapet and also, woman, Asian, representing a community. Anyway, I looked into it and I thought this is really interesting. Didn't really know much about it. But what that did do was it gave me exposure to some really, really vulnerable communities, understanding, policy, when policy goes wrong, how it really impacts
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable communities.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was leaving Santander to move to Microsoft, I realized that, gosh, I'm now in this system as a magistrate that I can see where, you know, there are real problems. And that's where I set up Global Diversity Positive Action, which is really looking at people that have got into a place where, they've fallen victim to whatever, but they needed a second or third chance. So rehabilitation, so looking at employability, to rehabilitate, people and get them back into community. So, if you've done something wrong, whatever, you've been punished or, you've gone through that rehabilitation process, you need an opportunity to get back into the community, into getting a job, that kind of thing. And that was the whole purpose, really. And what I found with that was that the more I get into it, so I'm still a magistrate and I've been doing it for nearly 20 years, is that actually policy and making sure that the people are making the right policy decisions is so important. So a lot of work I do now is making sure that our voice, particularly the ethnic minority voice, has got a seat round that table. Because when I set YABA up, I remember, you've got sort of like policymakers and MPs and councillors really happy. They say, oh, we've done this, document and we've done X, Y, and Z, and we've got this survey. Can we have the Asian voice? Can you contribute? Can you tell us what you're thinking? And I get really happy. Now I'll say no. When you are defining policy, we want to be around that table because we want to make sure that biases don't exist. So I now understand how policy is so important for our community. So I do a lot of campaigning around that, making sure we sit around that table and that representation is made at the right level and the right people are informing those decisions as well.
Okay, so actually, because I was going to ask you a little bit about your work as Justice of the Peace, the magistrate. So they're kind of quite intertwined. Then you got the GDPA because of what you saw in your work as Justice of the Peace, and that essentially influenced more of your community service, right? And you're talking about inclusivity, making sure that there is a seat at the table before the policy is even made. Before you get asked about, well, how is this going to influence you, right? You're trying to be having a seat at the table to be part of the policy making. So,
Part of getting the awards and the accolades and the OBE make people then take you seriously. But then part of the responsibility is making sure that the right people, get that voice. So I use the assets that I've acquired to make sure that my people have the voice, and we're able to make sure that that representation is there. So I suppose, I'm at that age now in my life where I feel that, giving back is really important. I'm happy with what I've got. I'm happy with my life. And I really, and, that exposure, particularly with vulnerable communities, because sometimes I look at, if I'm in court, so I'm in court tomorrow afternoon, would you believe? And I'll see people and I'll think, oh my God, you don't even realize how awful your life is. They don't even realize the opportunities that are there, and that's where education and community is really important. So I'll use that knowledge to try and influence some of the things that I'm doing. It's obviously as a magistrate, there's certain things that I'm there in a particular role, but I use that knowledge to make sure that I can make a difference or I can make sure that the right people are aware of what's going on.
Okay, yeah, so to inform the community, and that's
policy makers as well, So because of my network now with, whether it's with secretaries of state or MPs or, directors, that kind of thing, I make sure that they're aware so that they're making proper informed decisions and choices.
That's really good. So let's go on to some other skills and other work you've done. Tell us a little bit about this Cardinal Hume Catholic School, because you've worked with them. You're trying to address the gap in digital skills in the Northeast. So tell me, why do you think bridging this gap is so critical for that region's economic growth?
Yeah, well, to be honest, it's one of the reasons why. So I'm currently studying on my master's in AI, which is more around generative AI and data analytics. And actually, the world is changing again. And I saw that coming when I was at Microsoft, where you really looked at how we are using technology and how actually decisions are made by in fact the world. If you think about Trump and the elections, the key people that he had around him were the big tech giants. And you think about data and what's known about us. So if you want to control and you want to be part of that conversation, you need to understand how it's used. If you don't understand how it's used and what it's used for, then you're not even part of that conversation. So part of the work with Cardinal Hume was one of the schools, but we worked with quite a few of the other schools, was making sure that young people are in control of that digital revolution. So as opposed to it being to you, you're actually part of that conversation, and it's you're aware of, you know, the whole paraphernalia that goes around it, you know, whether it's around ethics and values, governance, biases. You know, it's not just a great enabler, but actually there's a huge responsibility around, you know, the whole digital revolution. So
Mm-hmm.
that sort of like drove me into the whole schools work. And again, you know, doing the masters, it's a game changer again, Shabana, honestly. What I'm learning and how I'm applying that to my businesses and the people that are around me, again, has been a huge game changer.
Mm.
Because actually everything is digitalized. And if you think about
Right.
young people now,
Yeah. Yeah.
they 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 expect that. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I come from a generation where we didn't have a mobile phone, but
Mm-hmm.
now, you know, not having a mobile phone is just unheard of. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, everything is digitalized.
Right. Yeah. So what do you think then as for young people especially? I mean, we have so many more schools that everything is focusing on STEM education, everything transforming to digital. So what do you think in this environment? How do you envision things like apprenticeships or certifications for empowering our next generation?
I
What are your
think,
thoughts on that?
yeah, I think it's the right way to go. I think we must, because actually, if we're thinking about efficiencies and productivity, you know, and in fact, I'll tell you now, AI is my best friend. I
Hmm.
do everything by using AI, and it's a tool. It's a tool, and we should understand the capability of that tool. And actually, we've created, you know, humans have created that tool. But
Hmm.
what we have to also understand is that how do we use that for the benefit of
Right.
humanity? And
Hmm.
that's where things like ethics, values, you know, are really, and governance is really important. And actually, who's controlling all of that? We
Hmm.
also need to be, you know, really, really mindful of that. And that's where voice is really important and representation is very important.
Hmm.
So that's why a lot of the work that I'm doing is making sure that we keep all of that, you know, at the forefront, because otherwise we'll get lost in this whole paraphernalia of what's going on and how the world is being digitized. Because yeah,
Yes.
it's great having all that data, but who's using it and what for? You know, and that's where leaders, you know, and that's where human beings in terms of their creativity and leaders are really important. And, you know, empowerment and entrepreneurship is really important as well. We shouldn't be doing mundane tasks. We should be thinking more, and we should be harnessing this, you know, digital world for the benefit of humankind. And if you look at,
Mhm.
you know, how, you know, if you look at the healthcare sector and you look at some of the other sort of like manufacturing sectors really benefited.
Mhm.
You know, robotics as well. I mean, you know, you're a doctor, you know how robotics has really influenced.
Mhm. Surgery.
Huge,
Yes. And
absolutely.
yeah.
You know, to the extent that, you know, you get minimal sort of
Minimally invasive procedures now. Yeah.
100%. It's a great thing, but then we've got to understand biases as well. So
Mhm.
really making sure that we're aware of, you know, there's always a give as well. So you've got to really understand all of that.
Mhm.
But that's why I think that education piece is very, very important.
Mhm. Right, to balance that. So let's shift a little bit now to some more global questions because you're international trade. So what is the opportunity? Because international trade and collaboration are said, of course, central to the missions of some of these YABA and NAP. And what kind of opportunities do you see for the businesses in the UK and in the Asian subcontinent to collaborate effectively?
So, and I think we have to really think about, you know, what does international trade and globalization mean? And if you
Mhm.
break it down, it's all around relationships. What the thing that I've really sort of like capitalized on is the diaspora is a really great way of doing trade with the Indian subcontinent. And I only picked up on that when I started working on the formation of the National Asian Business Association, where we looked at supply chain. So you looked at country of origin, and you looked at, you know, you had people that were born in India, knew the network, knew the people, and then you had a look at, you know, what's happening in the UK. Here's a really great route to market, and I think one of the things that I really find quite interesting is the fact that the UK is really sort of like, and the world is as well, and we alluded to it before. If you look at the States and what's happening with the tariffs, I just think to myself, why are we not looking at other partners? Why are we not thinking about India? Why are we not thinking about Singapore? Why are we not thinking about, other countries where we could really look at, alignments, relationships, and building other sort of, trade partners. And that's one of the things that I've been doing through the Ethnic Minority Business and Policy Forum, because we've
Mhm.
got a very strong African community that are
Mhm.
in the UK. Why are we not thinking of Africa? Why not thinking of Nigeria? Because
Mm.
if you've got intelligence and knowledge, then all you need to do is then, get the right team and then have a look at how can you capitalize on that and how can you commercialize what we're doing and share knowledge. And that's what I've been doing, Siobhan, over the last year or so.
Mhm. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. Are you talking about your think tank as well? Let's talk a little bit about your think tank,
So
your
I
policy
went
think
to
tank.
so 3 weeks ago, the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which is like our local government, went to India, so Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore, and I was sort of like the Indian trade kind of like ambassador because I know the culture, I know the language, I know the people. It's so bizarre, isn't it? You go to India, and I wasn't born there, and like I mentioned, up until I got married, I didn't even speak the language, but I knew it. I didn't need to speak it because I spoke English. But when I go to India, I just get it, just really understand the culture. So one of the things that I'm encouraging the West Yorkshire Combined Authority and the north of England actually to really think about India as a destination, India as a trade partner. So I went out and with sort of like non-Asian businesses to really look at how can you partner up and how can you look at relationships, how can you look at other business opportunities. And it was funny really because the businesses that went with me, they were you know English businesses and never really thought about India. And for some of them, they still see it as a land of snake charmers. Really feel it's going to be really difficult, it's going to be hard, it's going to be complicated in language. And they were blown away with the advancement of India. I mean, every time I go, I just think, my God, it's something to be even more proud of. Even though
Mhm.
I wasn't even born in India, I just feel so proud of India's achievements. And I
Mhm.
feel really great when I go there. And
Mhm.
I'm trying to encourage more of that, international trade going
Mhm.
that way, whether it's exporting. And then while I was out there, there were so many Indian businesses that are looking for route to market into the UK. So we've been a bit of a bridge. And all I've done is model it on Prime Minister Modi's Living Bridge. I thought, what a great idea. And I've just used that as a model and it's working. We've got so many Indian businesses think, I know, we'll go to London. And London think, well, do you know what, we've got too many. I say, come to the north of England, come to Leeds, come to Newcastle, come to Manchester, come to Liverpool, come to Bradford. There's some great opportunities, great diaspora, because it's not just about doing business. It's about, where are our places of worship? Where's our food? Where are our people? Where are our communities? And once you come in, you just assimilate. So we create that environment to make it really easy for people to do business.
Mhm. So you're also probably like trying to expand, like you said, beyond where there's more concentration, like in London, but really expand to the rest of the UK.
Well,
Um,
we
and
unashamedly say, don't go to London, forget
Mhm.
London, come to the
Mhm.
north of England. We
Right.
call ourselves the Northern Powerhouse. We say we will do everything we can to make it so easy for you to produce. If it's a product that you're producing, it's a service you provide. We will go out of our way to help you, to get to what you need.
Yeah. So has this collaboration shaped the change in the policy landscape for the ethnic minority businesses?
So for the ethnic minority businesses, we're doing business there anyway because it's
Mhm.
so easy. Because you go there, you meet your friend and think, what are you doing? What are you doing? Bang, because you've got so much in common. I'm
Mhm.
trying to encourage the non-Asian businesses to think about India as a destination and saying
Ah.
that it's easy. And then I say to the Indian businesses, you don't need to just work with us. Some other businesses here who actually, if here's another great market for you to expand and think about. So we are a conduit, we're a bridge.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about overall, after all this that you have done, what do you feel has been the most rewarding part of your career? I mean, is there any particular moment that, stands out in your mind as being really particularly meaningful?
You know, it's a journey, isn't it? I think so. I think as I get older, I pray quite a lot now, and I think I just want to make sure that everything I do has got a purpose, there's a meaning. So in the morning when I do my prayers, I just say, please make sure that everything I do is it's good. And then at the end of the day, I just, ask for forgiveness if there's anything that I've done wrong. Because I just want to make sure that whatever life I've got left, you know, that there's a meaning to it, there's a
Hmm.
purpose to it. Um, and when you see other people do that they've moved on, they do well, whether it's your family, whether it's children, whether it's people that you work with, it's a great feeling. So for
Hmm.
me, watching other people's success, I just, I mean, don't get me wrong, I felt really proud when I got the OBE and I get honours and things, but actually, it just feels a bit kind of surreal. But actually, being part of other people's success is much more valuable. It just feels so good, and if you feel that you've contributed to that, you just feel that you want to shout about it more. So I love
Hmm.
parties. I love being around community. I love celebrating other people's success.
Hmm.
You know, that for me just feels really good because
Right.
actually, celebrating your own successes isn't cool, doesn't feel really good. But celebrating other people and being part of somebody else's happiness is a really nice feeling. I love doing that. I really do enjoy that.
Hmm. That's great. It's beautiful. But so your leadership style, we said, so you said you really primarily, as you mentioned, you want to empower people, and your leadership style has also been transparent or strategic that you're known for. How has your leadership style helped you navigate any challenges that you've had throughout your career?
So I think before I did that master's, which really made me reflect, because before that, it was funny because when I was in one of the tutorials, and again, because it's always been driven around money, because when you've seen poverty, you never want to be in that position again. But actually, the question that she asked me, my tutor, she said, why do you do what you do? And I
Mhm.
thought, oh my God, why do I do what I do? So that reflection piece was really powerful. And I think for me, it was that that was a real sort of like again, and a real change moment, a watershed moment where I realized that it's not about me, nothing's about me, it's about we, and it's about how do you enhance the community and people matter. It's not about what do I do, because actually the more you give, the more you get. And I realized that actually the more you help, the more people help you. So I suppose my leadership style now, if I can I do feel quite privileged. I do feel really privileged. And if I can support people that are not privileged, I suppose that's something that's really important to me, you know.
Mhm.
And I suppose I just make that more my focus really. And empowering people. If I see vulnerability, the first thing I'll think about is that what can we do to make sure that that person has a chance?
Yeah.
Because I've been given so many chances. I've
Mhm.
made so many messes in my life. I mean, again, like my parents, they've been their backbone. You know, how do I make sure that I'm somebody's backbone? How can I make sure that other people don't feel like that? Because I know
Mhm.
what that feels like when you're there, but somebody has that safety blanket. And
Right.
I suppose being in court when I've seen people that don't have that safety blanket, I know what that looks like. I think, God and Bennett, I think, my God, you've had nothing. You've got nobody. I mean, I've met people that have got nobody, they've lived their life in care and they die, in assisted living. And I think, how can that be right? I just feel as human beings that we've got a responsibility to, to humanity, that we
Mhm.
change that and only we can change that.
Right. So is that what motivates you then? Because you have all these other accomplishments, accolades, positions, but the the motivation for you to keep working, keep pushing boundaries, keep exploring new opportunities, is that what motivates you? Is like the chance to empower people, the chance to help more people? That what is your motivation?
I think I'm a change maker, you know,
Hmm.
and when you are exposed to people who are desperate and people who have nothing, then you can't ignore that, which means that if you've been given privileges, it's your responsibility to use them in the right way. So
Hmm.
that's my motive in life. That
Hmm.
if I'm on a board, I need to make sure that those voices are heard on that board, not my voice, but those voices that I represent.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in a position where that change needs to happen, I need to make sure that that change does happen, and yeah, and my motivations have changed from being financially and commercially driven to value driven.
Mm-hmm.
Trust is really important and people are really important, community is really important. All the things that I used to think were just there that you took for granted, they're not because actually now they don't exist. You
Mm-hmm.
have a look round at some of the communities. It's funny because when I came back from India, there's such a change now. I actually saw more beggars in the place where I'm going, in London, in Leeds, in Bradford, than I saw on the streets of Mumbai. I was shocked. I thought, my God, they've really cleaned up the act here. But when I look at my own communities around here, I think there's there's nobody helping anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's just, how do you support the people that are making those changes, whether it's you or other people? How do you get behind a good cause?
Right.
How do you make sure that everybody gets a chance? And you don't do
Mm-hmm.
that yourself. You actually get behind other people's causes as well, and you do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. We need more people like you.
To be
Yeah.
honest, Shabana, there's so many people like me and better than me, and that's the one thing that I'm learning. The more you go down that path, the more people you realize, think, wow, there's some amazing people out there.
Yes, yes,
Actually, the,
exactly. And then part of what we do is try to make sure other people know that so they can be inspired, you know,
correct, yeah.
by by
And,
the
and
work we
and
do and
actually,
others.
the most miserable people you meet have actually got so much wealth because they what are they doing? Some of them they don't know what to do with it. And
Right?
actually, wealth again is something that you think that's not a good thing to have either. Too much wealth. Because all
Hmm.
you do is you're worrying about your wealth all the time.
Yes, exactly. So, how about your health? I mean, as a physician, I always ask, how do you maintain your health and, balance wellness, whether it's a mental, emotional, physical balance, health and wellness. What do you have a particular routine or something that?
This sounds really selfish, but I always look after number one, me. Because if I'm not in the right mindset and the right sort of, if my health and well-being isn't looked after, I'm no use to anybody.
That's really.
So I go to the gym every day. I'm a pure vegetarian. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I meditate all the time. I eat the best food. I have washed my own hair for 30 years. I go to a hairdresser. I absolutely make sure that my health and well-being is 150%. Then I'm in a position that I can help other people. It sounds really selfish, but I
It's
do
not
do that.
really because, yeah, you're doing it in order to be able to help others. Yeah, because if you don't take care of it, this is a really important message because it's a very common issue with women, especially. They keep giving, 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 and they don't have anything to give from if they're not taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
So that's really
You've got
good.
to find that time to
Hmm.
make sure that you feel good, you look good, and
Right?
then you can be good.
Hmm. That's true. So, what other advice, as we wind down here, Sharon? What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs, other professionals, especially from ethnic minority backgrounds? Anybody who's trying to look to make their mark in the UK?
I think you've got to have resilience. You've got to be determined. Never give up. If you believe in something and it's the right thing to do, follow your heart and do it. Then find other people like you. The other
Hmm.
thing as well is that if it's a toxic environment, negativity,
Hmm.
find your own tribe. Find good people that push and lift you.
Hmm.
If you're in a situation, whoever it is, it could even be family, but they're always bringing you down. Move, just get
Hmm.
out of it.
Hmm.
Because your mental well-being, has to be right. So find people that always make you feel good. Be in that crowd, and then you'll be good as well. And actually, be your own critic. Your own critique. Do your own sort of like critical analysis. I always think about what did I do? Was it the right thing to do? Because
So,
actually,
reflection, self-reflection, very important.
100%, yeah. Because
Hmm.
you've got to be true to yourself and true to your maker. You know if you did the right thing, and
Hmm.
be answerable to yourself as well.
Hmm. What is the secret to your success? What's been your secret sauce? Secret to your success?
Well, to be honest, I'm on a journey. I don't even know what I want to do when I grow up, kind of thing. I'm still on that journey. Every day it's like one of the things I love is Mahatma Buddha. Every day has got a new beginning. You start again. So you can then say, right, okay, I did that wrong. I need to do this. I need to work on this. Every day you're trying to, you're trying to make yourself a better person. You're trying to be a better person because you can't help it. As humans, we say something. or we've got something we think, you know, maybe I shouldn't have had that negative thought.
Hmm.
So I think for me, it's kind of like always, you're always trying to, you know,
Just keep trying to be a little better every day. Just keep going.
100%, yeah. And
Mhm.
if you can spread happiness and be happy, you know, and actually adversity is a powerful thing. You know, it's not having a life where everything's given for you. It's about how can you need challenges, you need to push yourself. I mean, don't
Otherwise,
get
you
me
wouldn't
wrong.
grow through. Yeah.
Well, I've got, you know, in 3 weeks, I've got 2 exams and 2 dissertations. I'm thinking, why am I putting myself through this torture? But I'll do it, and and I'll have a great feeling after it. But you've got to put the graft in. Don't be afraid to do the hard work. It's a good thing to do that.
Hmm. So you have this, you mentioned this another master's degree. So what is next for you on the horizon? And,
So
what is
I'm
the
a
future?
lifelong learner, you know, so I'll always be in education because I think education is just unbelievable.
Hmm.
And again, you know, challenges in life, whatever comes up at me, whatever I think I need to get behind it, I just do it. I don't write the script, Shabana. I used to. I used to be so driven that I used to make things happen. I don't write the script anymore. Just go, whatever God's will, whatever happens, get on with it and just do it.
Hmm. That's great. So we'll be interested to see where you go next, where life takes you. And but thank you so much for all your amazing contributions to
Thank
lifting
you,
other
Barbara.
people up and your words of wisdom and motivation. Very inspiring. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you on the show. Look forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
what you do next.
Thank you.